like to start out this morning talking about the people that aren't here this morning. Probably not what you expected me to say after listening to that story. I wanted to talk about the people that are not going to church. This is not a new trend. Over the years, we've heard about that. Different terms have been used to identify those that are not attending church. Unbelievers was in vogue in the 1960s and 70s. These were the people who did not believe in Jesus. The church's job was, was to convince them to believe by using catchy campaigns like 4 spiritual laws or 10 easy steps, things like that would help change their mind. We moved on into the 1980s and the 1990s. The term seekers was used to describe people who did not come to church, but were kind of interested in spirituality of some kind. So churches created seeker services that did not expect the attendees to do anything but listen to a band, play contemporary music, watch video clips, and listen to a message with fill-in-the-blank type outlines. The goal was to help people become seekers of Jesus. Sound kind of passive. But the trend, or the common theme in all these trends, is that the responsibility is on the church to change and become more appealing to the people. There was nothing mentioned about the responsibility of the people who were in the church, who are the believers. Current label now is people who don't affiliate with a particular faith tradition or go to church are called the nuns, N-O-N-E-S, not the Catholic version, just to be clear. According to the Pew Research Center study on America's changing religious landscape, reported on the rapid decrease in people who are part of mainline Protestant churches. They estimate there are approximately 56 million religiously unaffiliated adults in the U.S., which makes that group larger than the Catholic group or mainline Protestants. While 11% of the older adults are in this category, more than 36% of young adults do not participate in a religious faith community. When we label this group as nuns, it seems to put the blame on them for not believing and lets the church and the church congregation off the hook. We can say they aren't coming to our churches because they've lost their faith or because they don't believe in anything, when really what they're struggling with is a lack of knowledge of what it means to follow Jesus, or maybe even just an invitation to begin to think about it. Jonah was sent and was supposed to be dealing with the nuns, N-O-N-E-S, of Nineveh. God told him very clearly to go and reach out to these unbelieving people. And what did Noah do? He went the opposite way. He didn't want to have to deal with these people that were not like him, that did not believe. He did not want to have to change his routine. And he ran into trouble. Sleeping on board the boat, a big storm, being thrown overboard, and the part that you all know. What happens next? The whale. He ends up in the belly of a fish. God gave him plenty of time to think it over and reconsider, and probably a pretty smelly, stinky place. So it took a pretty radical approach for Jonah to come to his senses, get over himself, and follow God's path for him. So he finally does go off to Nineveh. So this is the rest of the story. Think about how different his response was when he was asked to go somewhere, compared to the response of Peter, Andrew, James, and John when Jesus talked to them on the lakeshore. Jesus told them to follow him and be fishers of men. No outward drama like Jonah. No running away. No storms. No big fish stories. They put down their nets. They changed the focus of their lives from equipment repair, weather forecasts, catching fish, and making a profit. They started spreading the word of God to the nuns of the world. They changed their lives and lives of many others. Now, talking to the nuns is not about getting more people in the pews. Nowhere does it say that a full church is a better church. God did not send Jonah to Nineveh to fill up a church building. God didn't send him there to find others that were just like him. He didn't send him to a popular place, but sent him to a foreign place. He didn't send him to a place for the in people. He sent him to a place where the people were not particularly attractive. He didn't send him to a happy place. He sent him to a place that was suffering. Our mission in spreading the news of God is to be like Jonah, to go make disciples of Christ rather than focus on getting new members for the Suncook United Methodist Church. You may or may not know that we currently have a team participating in the shift process. We have a team. Peter is our leader, Tricia Boucher, Alicia Muffy, myself, and Pastor Sue. This is a program that's designed to assist church congregations to look at best practices of hospitality, worship, service, and generosity, and create ways to be more effective in those areas of our ministry. This process involves some training sessions, sitting in a classroom, some reading, and using technology with some video conference calls. So we're working with a group of other churches and some coaches, so it's not just us doing it, we're able to work with some other groups. This process will also involve trying some new things. As Albert Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. We believe that God has blessed us with potential, with faith, with creativity, and with forgiveness, as we may make some mistakes along the way as we experiment. We are starting with hospitality, genuine hospitality. This is more than being friendly and saying hello on Sunday morning. It means making room for others and welcoming the stranger, accepting them, loving them, and including them in our lives. We've always described ourselves as a friendly church. But God did not create us just to be friendly and to enjoy each other's company. The people of God are called to be a blessing to others and share the news of God's love with others. So we need to look carefully at ourselves. We need to listen carefully to our conversation. We need to make sure that we are living each and every moment as the people of God. But let's not forget the rest of the Jonah story. I let Peter off the hook and didn't make him read the whole thing. Jonah finally makes it to Nineveh, talks to the people, and guess what happens? They listen, they change their ways, and then God forgives them. What's Jonah's response to that? He gets mad. He gets really, really mad. He gets angry with God for forgiving these awful people for their mistakes. And he totally overlooked the fact that God had shown him the same forgiving compassion. Reba Riley wrote a book called Losing My Religion, America's Post-Traumatic Church Syndrome. She says, I see thousands of stories of brokenness. I see the millions of people who crash into religion when they go looking for God. I see people so tired of being spiritually bruised that they give up on faith altogether. She brings home a point that is often lost in the desire to fix blames. People who leave or who are left by their faith lose a lot more than a place to go on Sunday morning. They lose relationships with family, with friends. They lose social status, tribal approval, and self-esteem. They lose their God, their identity, their gravity. So as we grapple with this population of people who have left the church or who have never been part of the church, perhaps prayer and seeking God's wisdom is a place to start. Not with rollouts of new programs or initiatives to reach the nuns, but with humility and a self-awareness that causes us to take stock of our own attitudes, actions, and words that may hurt, damage, and destroy people's faith in God. We need to do what it takes to obey God and make disciples. We need to grow our faith, be courageous, show compassion, and listen carefully. We need to really listen to that voice of God. For me, it is often a quiet thought in the back of my head. If I dismiss it, it just sits there. And if I keep dismissing it, it becomes a nagging thought. If I still choose not to respond, just like turning up the volume, it becomes a more persistent thought that I can't ignore. I have learned through experience that it's best to listen to that and listen at the quiet whispering point. And the other thing that's interesting is that voice never asks me what I want to do. It's always telling me where I should go and what I should do. We also need to listen to other stories of how God has worked in our lives. This is often not large miracles done in the presence of crowds with many witnesses, kind of what Huntley talked about last week at the healing of the lame man and lowering him through the roof and everyone watching it. And there's often not a YouTube video of it for other people to see or the rest of the world to watch. It can be simple, everyday events. I often am amazed how I'm in the right place at the right time to help someone in a small way. Is that a coincidence? I don't think that anymore. After I'm in that kind of situation, I stop myself and offer up a prayer of thanks to God before I move on to my next task. We must make the time to pray constantly, give room for God to touch and change our lives and other people's lives. We may need to be open to making changes in our lives, changes in our routines, changes in our way of living and loving. We are called to create space for people to experience and be invited to experience the grace of Jesus. That is our purpose and our only goal. We can start here with hospitality. Let's run toward that and not away like Jonah. Who knows what will happen? I invite you to join us and try.